Family betrayal. My parents prized my sister all my life, then she learned I had $10 million and blew up right at Thanksgiving dinner. What happens when the family who always overlooked you suddenly discovers you're worth $10 million? The Thanksgiving dinner that followed wasn't just ruined, it became a battlefield where years of resentment finally exploded. For years, my life felt like a shadow play, always a step behind the spotlight my parents reserved for my sister. My childhood home, though filled with laughter for one, often felt like a silent stage for me, setting the scene for a truth I wouldn't uncover until much later. I'm Eleanor, 38 years old, and I'm telling this story not for pity, but because someone, somewhere, needs to hear it. My world utterly shifted when I was 8. My sister, Chloe, arrived prematurely. I remember my dad rushing to the hospital in the dead of night, while my Aunt Sarah stayed with me, her face etched with worry. Everyone was anxious about the baby, and I was no different. I didn't fully grasp the complexities of premature birth, but I understood something wasn't right. Chloe survived, though she was incredibly fragile. Our house transformed into a miniature hospital, my mom constantly cleaning. The sharp, acrid scent of disinfectant hung heavy in the air. If I so much as sniffled, my mother's concern was never for me, but always for Chloe. "Eleanor, was that a cough?" she'd ask, alarmed. "We can't take any chances. Pack a bag. You're staying at Grandma's for a few days." I frequently found myself at Grandma's or Aunt Sarah's, as if I carried some invisible illness. At first, these visits felt like small adventures, a temporary escape. But over time, the truth seeped in, I was being pushed aside. Desperate for my parents' approval, I poured myself into school. I earned top grades, joined the debate team, even won a science fair. Yet, Chloe's health always overshadowed my achievements. "Look, Mom, I won the science fair," I'd say excitedly, clutching my trophy. "That's nice, dear. Did you wash your hands?" "Chloe's been feeling a little under the weather," she'd reply, dismissively. It cut deep, every single time. By the time Chloe turned 7, she had outgrown her early illnesses. She was finally a robust, healthy child. But my parents remained stuck in their protective habits, unable to let go. Chloe, realizing the incredible power she held, began to exploit their unwavering attention, feigning vulnerability whenever she wanted something. High school, I thought, would be my moment. I worked diligently, maintained excellent grades, and joined every extracurricular I could. Yet, Chloe's needs always took precedence. One night, my science teacher called my parents, praising my potential. "Eleanor is one of our brightest students," he raved. He mentioned a real shot at a prestigious science scholarship. Then, my mother's phone rang. It was Chloe, at home with the babysitter, utterly distraught. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Mom asked, her voice instantly laced with concern. Chloe sobbed through the receiver. "I can't find my favorite pen for homework. The one Eleanor gave me is awful." Just like that, my moment evaporated. My parents rushed home, abandoning the conversation about my future, all to help Chloe locate a pen. After that, they just stopped attending my school events entirely. "It's just easier this way," they reasoned. "Chloe gets upset when she feels left out." When I won the state debate championship, they didn't even display my trophy. "Chloe doesn't like seeing other people's awards," my mother explained, tucking it away in a drawer as if it were a dirty secret. Getting accepted into college should have been a celebratory milestone. I had earned a full-ride scholarship to the state university, covering both tuition and living expenses. I was thrilled, truly. Until I stepped through the front door at dinner. Chloe barely looked up before rolling her eyes. "Finally, you can move out. I'm turning your room into my gaming setup. I want 3 monitors and a streaming rig." From that moment on, I started counting down the days. Those college years flew by. I spent as much time as possible on campus, treating home like a mere pit stop for occasional family dinners where Chloe monopolized the conversation with trivial middle school drama. At 23, degree in hand, I landed a managerial role at Thompson and Company. The salary wasn't enough for luxury living or expensive sushi, but I had my own place, and that was enough for me. Then one day, an ad caught my attention: learn how to make your money work for you. Normally, I'd scroll right past. This time, I paused. The course had a fee, but I figured I could afford it if I lived on cheap instant noodles for a while. That decision? It changed everything. The instructor, Daniel, made investing seem incredibly straightforward. I started small, a few hundred into tech stocks, then gradually increased my investments. I researched the market, studied risk management, devoured every book I could find. My first big break came when I invested in a small AI company no one was talking about. A $375 investment skyrocketed to $3,500 in 3 months. Then a biotech startup tripled my money. Before I knew it, I was earning more from investing than from my actual job. The moment I realized I could walk away from corporate life is still so vivid. I was sitting at my desk, pretending to care about some spreadsheet, when I checked my investment app. A stock had hit its target price. Running the numbers, I saw my investment income had tripled my salary. Right then and there, I drafted my resignation letter. Still, I kept up the habit of attending Saturday family dinners. Maybe out of routine, maybe out of some lingering hope that something would be different. I'd sit there, eating my mom's mediocre chicken, listening to them discuss Chloe's latest achievements or perceived slights, while my investments quietly churned out wealth in the background. "Eleanor, you're still working at Thompson's, right?" Mom would ask, barely interested in the response. "Yep, same job," I'd reply, knowing they'd stop listening before I even finished speaking. It was easier that way. No need to explain I'd left 2 years ago and was now making more in a day than I once did in a month. Chloe, of course, was the perpetual focus of every meal. She'd been accepted into Carleton University, an incredibly expensive private school. "It's a huge cost," Mom would sigh, though her voice held nothing but pride. "But Chloe deserves the best. We took out loans, but it's worth it for our little girl's future." Chloe, twirling her pasta, would casually add, "My roommate has a Gucci backpack. Everyone there comes from such wealthy families." Her implication was clear: our family, their efforts, simply didn't measure up. Then one Saturday, I found Mom crying over a stack of bills. Dad sat at the table, drowning in paperwork. "Property taxes increased again," he muttered. And with Chloe's tuition, watching them struggle, I thought about all the times they had put Chloe before me. But no matter what, they were still my parents. That night, I set up an automatic transfer of $7,000 a month to their account. When I told them, Mom actually hugged me for the first time in years. "Oh, Eleanor, this will help so much." I had held on to a small, foolish hope that things would change, that maybe they would finally see me in a different light. But that hope shattered when I overheard them in the kitchen after dinner. "We should give some of Eleanor's money to Chloe," Mom suggested. "At least $450. The poor thing feels so out of place surrounded by all those rich students." Dad agreed without hesitation. "Good idea. She needs to maintain appearances. Maybe she can finally get that designer bag she's been eyeing." I wanted to storm in and tell them everything, that I'd quit my job years ago, that my investments had made me wealthier than they could possibly imagine, that if I wanted, I could buy the entire store they were so eager to help Chloe shop in. But I didn't. I just stood there, shaking my head, as they plotted to funnel my hard-earned money into Chloe's social status. By the time I turned 29, I was ready for something new. My investments had exceeded my wildest expectations, and I was done with renting. After months of searching, I found the perfect apartment, secure, with a stunning city view. It wasn't flashy, just well-built and spacious enough to feel like home. The best part? I could buy it outright. No mortgage, no debt, no financial strings attached. The day I got the keys, I stood in the empty living room, listening to my footsteps echo against the walls. This was mine. No one else had a claim on it. No loans, no approval from anyone but myself. When Mom called, as usual, to talk about Chloe under the pretense of checking in on me, I casually mentioned I was moving. "Did you find a cheaper place to rent?" she asked, distracted, papers rustling in the background. "Just a different place," I replied vaguely. "Better location." "Well, don't spend too much on rent, honey. You know how unstable the job market is in your field." I nearly laughed. If only she knew that my field now consisted of managing millions in investments, not pushing papers at Thompson's like she still assumed. At the next family gathering, Aunt Sarah asked about my new place. Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "Eleanor is renting a new apartment," she said dismissively. "But wait until you hear about Chloe's big news. She's about to graduate at the top of her class from Carleton University." As always, the conversation became a Chloe highlight reel. The relatives gushed over her bright future, occasionally glancing at me with expressions of mild sympathy. "Chloe's going places," Dad declared proudly. "Not that we're surprised. She's always been our star. Companies are already competing to hire her." Unlike some people who settle for being average, my cousin muttered to his wife, just loud enough for me to catch. I took a slow sip of my wine, thinking about the stock deal I had made that morning, one that had brought in more money in a single day than he made in an entire year. But I said nothing. Let them believe what they wanted. Then came Chloe's graduation party. Mom and Dad went all out. Catered meals, elegant decorations, the whole spectacle. I couldn't help but notice that a significant chunk of the money I sent them had gone toward funding the celebration. But at this point, I was used to it. Chloe strutted around in her cap and gown like she had just cured cancer. She spotted me by the punch bowl and immediately made a beeline, gripping her diploma like a trophy. "Look at this, Eleanor," she said, shoving it in my face. "Carleton University. Not some state school like the one you went to. And I already have interviews lined up with top companies. I'm not going to end up pushing papers like you." I took another sip of my drink. "Congratulations, Chloe." "That's all you have to say?" she scoffed. "Aren't you jealous? I mean, I'm going to be so successful, and you're just, well, you." She stood there, practically vibrating with the need for me to admit she was superior. I could have easily told her about my investments, my fully owned apartment, and how I made more before finishing my morning coffee than she would in her entire first year at work. But what would be the point? Instead, I simply shrugged and walked away, leaving her standing there, clutching her diploma like a shield against her own insecurities. 3 months after graduation, Chloe was still job hunting. Those companies she had boasted about, the ones supposedly eager to snatch her up, didn't seem too impressed with her pricey degree after all. Meanwhile, the student loan bills had started arriving. One evening, Mom called. "Eleanor, do you have a second to talk?" I already knew what was coming. Chloe's loan payments, she hesitated, probably trying to add some dramatic weight to her words. "They're really taking a toll on us, honey, and with all our other expenses. I hate to even ask, but could you possibly, how much do you need?" I cut in, already sensing I'd regret it. "Well, if you could raise your monthly contribution to $3,500, it would be an absolute lifesaver." I thought about all the times they had dismissed my accomplishments, all the moments Chloe had mocked my career. But I also considered my bank account, sitting comfortably in the 7-figure range, something my family remained completely oblivious to. "All right," I finally said, my voice flat. "I'll adjust the payments starting next month." Mom barely got her thank you out before launching into plans for the money. "This will help so much with Chloe's loans, and maybe we can get her some proper outfits for interviews." A few weeks later, Chloe finally landed a job at the same company where Dad had connections. He just so happened to know the HR director from college. The irony wasn't lost on me when she walked in with the title of manager. One weekend, I dropped by our parents' house and found Chloe sprawled across the couch, scrolling through apartment listings on her phone. "Everything is ridiculously overpriced," she complained. "I can't believe I have to stay here with Mom and Dad. It's so humiliating." "You could consider a smaller place," I suggested, "or maybe look outside the city center." She gave me a look as if I had suggested she live in a cardboard box. "I need to be in the right neighborhood, Eleanor. Not that you'd understand. Some of us have actual standards." I glanced around at our parents' modest living room where she was currently living rent-free, but I chose to keep my thoughts to myself. She sighed, tossing her phone aside. "This is just temporary. Unlike you, I won't be stuck as a manager forever. I have real potential." As Thanksgiving approached, Mom threw herself into her usual frantic hosting routine. Every year, she insisted on doing everything herself, transforming the kitchen into a chaotic mess. But this time was different. "I have no idea what I'm going to do," she lamented over the phone a week before Thanksgiving. "I strained my back pulling Chloe's laundry out of the dryer. And now I can barely stand. How am I supposed to cook for 20 people? Why don't you let me take care of it?" I suggested. "I can have everything. Catered from that new restaurant downtown." Mom's tone immediately brightened. "You're such a wonderful daughter. I don't know what we'd do without you." On our video call, I caught a glimpse of Chloe in the background, dramatically rolling her eyes. Even the smallest bit of praise directed at me was enough to ruin her mood. Thanksgiving Day arrived, unfolding like every other family gathering. The catered food showed up right on time, and I helped Mom set everything up while doing my best to ignore Chloe's ongoing comments about how store-bought stuffing could never measure up to homemade. I brought my laptop along since the Asian stock markets would open during dinner, and I had investments to monitor. I set it up in my old bedroom, left it running, and went to join my family. The food was excellent, far better than Mom's usual dry turkey. As everyone got comfortable with their plates, Mom couldn't resist bringing up her injured back. "I was so worried about how I'd manage all the cooking," she told the room full of aunts, uncles, and cousins. "But Eleanor stepped in and arranged for this wonderful catered meal. Wasn't that thoughtful?" "That was really generous of you, Eleanor," Aunt Sarah smiled warmly. "I imagine it wasn't cheap." "Oh, it's nothing," I replied, brushing it off. "I'm just glad everyone's enjoying it." "She earns enough at that management job to help us quite a bit," Mom added proudly. Probably the first time she had ever openly acknowledged anything I did. Across the table, Chloe's face darkened. Without warning, she shoved her chair back and stormed out of the room. I thought it was just one of her usual tantrums, but something felt different this time. When she returned, she was gripping my laptop, her smirk sending a cold wave of dread through me. "Let's find out just how well Eleanor is really doing," she announced, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Since she's so generous, she won't mind if I show everyone her bank balance. Time to expose what a fraud she actually is." I shot up from my seat. "Chloe, don't." But it was too late. She had already turned the laptop around. My banking app, still open from earlier, was on full display. The room went utterly silent. Chloe's expression twisted as all the color drained from her face. Her hands trembled so violently I thought she might drop the laptop. "Chloe?" Mom's voice wavered with concern. "What is it? What does it say?" Chloe's voice came out in a barely audible whisper. 10 million. The silence was suffocating. I could hear the ticking of Mom's old wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, and the faint clatter of my cousin's fork hitting his plate. "There must be some mistake," Aunt Sarah murmured, leaning closer. "Eleanor is just a manager at Thompson." "I haven't worked at Thompson in years," I stated calmly, finally telling the truth. I left to focus on investing full-time. I studied the markets, took courses, and became highly skilled. "You mean, you're rich?" Chloe's voice cracked on the last word. I took a slow breath, looking at the stunned faces around me. I've been investing for years. I started small, learned as I went, and yes, that account has $10 million in it. I wasn't keeping it a secret. You all just never asked. The silence barely lasted 3 seconds before Mom shattered it with a piercing shriek. $10 million? She jumped up, her face turning an alarming shade of red. You've had $10 million and you let us struggle? I stared at her in disbelief. Struggle? I send you $7,000 every single month. Her voice climbed to an ear-splitting pitch. Your sister has student loans. We have bills. How could you be so selfish, so unbelievably greedy? Dad's face twisted with fury. We raised you better than this, Eleanor. You've been sitting on all this money while your own family suffers. Something inside me snapped. Years of being the overlooked one, the reliable but unimportant daughter, came crashing down all at once. Oh, so saving money is a crime now? I scoffed, though there was nothing funny about it. Tell me, where was Mom and Dad's magical savings when it was time to pay for your college, Chloe? Oh, that's right. They never saved a dime because they spent everything on you. But here's the kicker, they didn't pay for my education either. I earned a full scholarship while you racked up loans for your fancy private school. That's completely different. Mom snapped. Chloe needed. Chloe wanted. Chloe. I cut her off, my voice rising, raw with years of suppressed anger. It's always been about Chloe. Well, here's a reality check, my money is mine. Every single dollar. I earned it. $7,000 a month is nothing to you, Mom shot back. You should be giving us at least $10,000. We're your parents. A sharp, bitter laugh escaped me. $10,000? What? So you can keep pampering your golden child? I turned to Chloe, who was inching away now, looking terrified. You wanted to expose me as a failure. How's that working out for you? The sister you mocked for being just a manager turned out to be the one who actually made something of herself. Tell me, Chloe, how does that feel? The entire family sat frozen, forks in midair, watching the disaster unfold like a chaotic tennis match. If you're so successful, Mom sneered, then you should be supporting your family. That's your duty. My duty? I stepped closer to Chloe and snatched my laptop from her shaking hands. No. My duty ended the moment you decided I didn't matter. You put everything into Chloe because she was the special one with the bright future. Well, go ahead. Let her and that bright future of hers take care of you. Aunt Sarah tried to intervene. Maybe we should all take a breath, but it was too late. Mom and Dad were both yelling now, their voices merging into a deafening storm of anger, blame, and entitlement. Chloe had burst into tears, her go-to move when things didn't go her way. I didn't say another word. I just turned and walked out of the house I had once called home. As I reached my car, I could still hear my mother's furious voice screeching behind me. The messages started before I even made it back to my apartment. My phone buzzed nonstop, calls, texts, all from Mom, Dad, and Chloe. At first, they were furious, demanding. Then they shifted to guilt-tripping. I tried responding at first, thinking maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand, but it was useless. They didn't want to understand. They wanted my money. Then, Mom took it to social media. Her post was a masterpiece of manipulation. My heart is broken to discover that my eldest daughter has become wealthy while her family struggles. She refuses to help her sister with her student loans or support her aging parents. Money truly does change people. Please keep Eleanor in your prayers so she remembers the meaning of family. The backlash came from all directions. Family friends I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had strong opinions about me. How could she be so heartless? I always knew something was off about her. What kind of person abandons their own family? Mom eagerly engaged with every comment, responding with crying emojis and messages of gratitude for their support. The relatives who had actually witnessed the Thanksgiving chaos remained silent, but their silence did nothing to stop the flood of judgment. Strangers and distant acquaintances labeled me selfish, ungrateful, and cruel. That was the final straw. I opened my banking app and stared at the automatic transfers to my parents. $7,000 every single month. Money they had dismissed as if it meant nothing. With a single tap, I canceled it. Then I sent one last message to Mom: I've stopped the payments. I'm done being your personal ATM, don't contact me again. But they didn't understand. The calls escalated, flooding my phone at all hours. Chloe used different numbers to reach me. When I blocked hers, Dad left endless voicemails droning on about my supposed obligation to family. Mom doubled down on her social media theatrics, twisting the narrative further. I blocked them all. Phone numbers, emails, every social media account they could use to reach me. But I knew they wouldn't stop there. So, I took precautions. I called Michael, the front desk manager of my building. I need to put some names on the do not allow in list, I told him. I provided their full names, descriptions, and even showed him their pictures. He nodded, noting everything down. Sure enough, the very next day, Michael called. My parents and Chloe had shown up, trying to force their way in. They made a scene in the lobby, shouting threats and even claiming they'd call the police. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started browsing houses in other states. Maybe it was time for a fresh start somewhere they couldn't find me. Some would call it running away. I call it setting boundaries. They had their chances, years of them. They could have supported me, acknowledged my hard work, treated me with the same love and respect they showered on Chloe. Instead, they belittled me, dismissed my success, and only came running when they wanted my money. Now that I've seen their true colors, I feel no guilt in cutting them off. As I scroll through listings in faraway cities, all I feel is relief. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is walk away, even if it means walking away from family. Was I justified in walking away, or did I abandon my family? What would you have done? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.